Can you give me a detailed look at Denmark's democracy? Can you compare it to Canada's democracy? Can you point out what it does better and what it does worse? Okay, so if I remember correctly, can I see happiness? Have a link to it? Denmark is 3. So the three democracies I have listed here that I want to look at were Denmark, Norway, and Finland. There's also Iceland. Iceland gets a little smaller population. Costa Rica. Really, Costa Rica placed high. Sweden's up here too. Netherlands, Israel, New Zealand. Where's Canada again? We're like, US is 23, Canada is 25. Might as well look at these countries and see what they're doing well. Okay. Can you give me a detailed look at Denmark's democracy? Can you compare it to Canada's democracy? Can you point out where it does better and what it does worse? Okay, let's go. Is this thinking mode? I think so. We're done with Palantir. Subscribe to him. Yeah, that Palantir stuff, like, it's all about information. And the more information, the better decision you can make. And as soon as people depend on you for decisions, you have more power, and then you can use that power. That gets scary pretty quick. Okay. Still got music. I'm going to take these off. Your topic, both are strong, well-established democracies, but they differ significantly in structure, culture, and outcomes. Here's a thorough breakdown. Perfect. Denmark's democracy at a glance. Denmark scores 9.28 out of 10 on the EIU Democratic Index. This sounds like something we should look up. I want to see the report. I don't really want to download the report. I love. Tells me I like this. I see it. Great. Filter all sort of. Are these pegged because it's my current location? Okay, so these two are pegged, and then it goes down. Okay, let's have a look. Canada sits at 8.69. We're looking at Denmark, 9.28, 9.39. Norway, oh, it's at the top. It's near 10. So is that what they use as like their top one? We're gonna have to look at them at some point too. Finland does well. I guess we could just see here. Norway, New Zealand. I hear New Zealand's got a good democratic system. Sweden, Iceland, Switzerland. US is at 7.85. UK is at 8. We do a little bit better, 8.69. Let's look at some of the worst ones. How does Iran do? 1.96. with very little change. Like that's about as dark as red as we can see. Is there any worse? Myanmar and Afghanistan. Oh, that's horrible. That was the war, right? And so they actually were up at almost orange for a while. And then the war happened and it's boom. Basically zero. There is no democracy. Democracy is dead. And there's a lot of places in Africa that has bad democracies. But look, South Africa. Botswana. I mean, that's pretty good. Even India. Pretty good democracy over there. Japan. Korea. China, still a dictatorship. Yep. Maybe that checks out. I wonder what that downward slope was there. Okay. Let's continue. Placing it 7th in the world, making it one of the highest performing democracies on Earth. It holds regular, free, and fair election. Citizens enjoy full political rights. The government protects free expression and association, and the judiciary functions independently. I mean, let's see here. If we've got this index, let's see if we can put it there. Okay. Now we're going to grab this. And we want the happiness index. No, don't move. Happiness. Let's compare these two. So, Finland. If I made it smaller, I don't get the chart. Hard way, huh? Oh well, we will get the comparison up side by side. Here we go. So, I want to compare how they do on the democracy and then how they do on the happiness. Happiness, Finland. Finland, where are you? 9.3, really high. Iceland, 9.68, even higher, 4th. Denmark, 9.28. Costa Rica, okay. This one isn't up here. Costa Rica. Even looking in the right part of the world. 8.29. That's actually a lower one for how high it is on the happiness end. Wait, Costa Rica's there. That's right. Costa Rica. They've always been really high too on democracy. Like, look, Nicaragua down, but Costa Rica. I mean, that's a beautiful part of the world right there. But still really high on the democracies. Sweden 3rd over here, 9.39. Norway, it's almost like having a better democratic system leads to better outcomes for your citizen. It's crazy. Like, who could have ever guessed? Netherlands 9. Israel. Okay, this is an interesting one. I don't think I've seen Israel up here. Israel is so close. Israel. I seen it. I seen it. I seen it. 7.8. Still high. That one's definitely a little bit of an outlier. Yeah, that one's weird. Like, they're so high on the happiness index, and they're significantly low. Luxembourg, Switzerland, New Zealand, Mexico. Okay, Mexico's not actually on here. Oh. Ooh. Mexico's an outlier. I wonder why. Ireland, but the trend is pretty consistent. Okay, we're getting down to where they're gonna be down here. But yeah, the trend is pretty consistent with the ranking in your happiness and the ranking in your democracy, with a couple outliers. Israel slightly lower democracy, but I mean, still quite high in the democratic. 7.8. That's still pretty high. And Mexico's kind of the only real outlier. Why are people so happy in Mexico? On the World Economic Forum, Mexico ranks high on happiness, but is one of the few countries in the upper happiness level that ranks low in a democracy value. Why are people in Mexico so happy? Democracy. I should. What is that democracy? Democracy index. Value index. Let's see. I'm getting off topic here. Okay. We're looking at Denmark's democracy. The system. Denmark is a constitutional monarchy with a unicameral parliament called the Folketing. Folketing. Okay. Let's get that right, because this is their parliament, right?
Folketing.
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 The Folketing. Okay, this one. The Folketing.
Folketing.
Okay, that's Denmark's parliament.
Unicameral parliament.
Unicameral. Called the Folketing, which has 179 seats. It uses proportional representation, which meaning parties receive seats roughly in proportional to the share of votes they earn nationally. I like this. I like this a lot. They receive seats proportional to the share of votes they earn nationally. This gets rid of that whole you need a majority in a district to get a seat. This is what removes the two-party system right here. I like this. I like this a lot. I'm gonna make sure to write this down somewhere. Proportional representation, meaning parties receive seats roughly in proportion to the share of votes they earn This almost always produces multi-party coalition government, which encourages negotiation and consensus building rather than winner-take-all politics. Okay. I largely see this as an improvement on the Canadian system. I like that. Denmark performs in the high range across all categories of the global state of democracy framework and in the top 25% countries across all factors. Voter turnout regularly exceeds 85%, which is almost the highest of any democracy. Corruption is virtually non existent. Transparency International consistently ranks Denmark number 1 or number 2 globally in its corruption perception index. I wanted this. I want to save this. Just go to bookmarks and I'll decide what to do with it. You're already saved. I want to find corruption perception index. Give me a map. Give me a chart. Ooh, okay. We do have a map. So the redder, the more corrupt, the more yellow, the less corrupt. 6, rank 4. Denmark is right at the top. Okay. But its score's actually gone down. Where's Canada? 16th, huh? 75. Just off the bottom. Okay. We're good. So like that's pretty good. Our score hasn't really changed. 2024. And the corruption index. The United States is 29th with a score of 64. Let's look at some of the other highlights. Denmark, Finland, Singapore, all what we expect. New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, Luxembourg also tend to be the countries of the highest happiness index. Just gonna say, Germany's moved up recently. Ranked 10, they got a +2. Iceland, Australia, Estonia. All right, let's have a look at some of the most corrupt. South Sudan, 9. But South Sudan, so that's going to be here. +1. They have gotten better from 8 to 9. And then Somalia, isn't that one in here? 2. There we go. This is like the Somalian pirates. I remember. All right. Venezuela. Really? On the list of the most corrupt. 10. Yemen. Yeah. Know that one. Libya. You know it's going to be dark. Here. Oh, there's a lot of conflict in that region. Eritrea? Not even going to guess where that is. Like it's a super dark spot, right? Turkmenistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Honduras, Venezuela. No, I'm guessing it's a very tiny, that little one. Yep. Sudan, yeah. Nicaragua, really? Syria, North Korea actually is at 15 for the corruption. It's better than actually quite a few. Myanmar, Afghanistan, yeah, countries. I also like this shirt, shouldn't it? They were number one this time. I'd asked the question somewhere. It is a fascinating paradox. As the World 2026 World Happiness Report, Mexico consistently ranks as one of the happiest nations in the world, breaking into the top 12 globally this year. Despite often being categorized as a hybrid regime or a flawed democracy by economists, Intelligent Unit Democracy Index. This disconnect occurs because happiness insight and democracy insights measure fundamentally different things. While Democracy Index looks at institutional health, rule of law, corruption, and political perception, happiness reports focus on subjects' well being, how people actually feel about their daily lives. Here is why Mexico maintains such high happiness levels despite institutional challenges. The power of social capital. The World Happiness Report identifies social support as one of the strongest predictors of well being. In Mexico, the family unit and local community are often the primary safety net. Strong social ties. Close knit family structures provide emotional and financial security that official government systems might lack. The prosecual effect. High levels of community engagement and neighborhood solidarity act as a buffer against political or economic stress. Culture resistant and optimismo. Researchers often point to a cultural trait in Mexico and many parts of Latin America called cultural resilience. This is physiological tendency to find joy and meaning in the present moment, often through festivals and traditions. Mexico has one of the highest numbers of holidays and community celebrations in the world. These events reinforce a sense of belonging. Reframing adversity. There is a strong cultural emphasis on humor and socialization as a way to cope with hardship, which prevents political frustrations from taking overall life satisfaction. Freedom to make life choices. Interesting, Mexico scores remarkably well on the freedom to make life choices metric. Even when the political system feels rigid or corrupt, Mexicans often report a high degree of personal freedom in their social lives, career paths, even in the informal economy and daily routines. Healthy life expectancy and environment. While Mexico faces public health challenges, its healthy life expectancy remains relatively high compared to many other developed nations. Additionally, factors like favorable climate, it is a beautiful place, and a diet rich in fresh local foods contribute to a baseline of physical well-being that supports a positive mood. In summary, in short, people in Mexico aren't necessarily happy with their government. They are happy in spite of it. The high ranking is driven by a culture that prioritizes deep human connection and emotional resilience over institutional perfection. Does the idea that social ties can outweigh political stability change how you view success for a country? Interesting. I mean, clearly, based on what we saw, doing well on the democracy index tends to lead you to do well on the happiness. The better you do at democracy, typically the happier your people are. But there are certainly places which kind of break the mold. Okay, let's get back to what I was supposed to be talking about, which is Denmark's democracy. Okay, Canada's democracy at a glance. So this is stuff I should all already know. Canada ranks 14th on the EUI's Democracy Index of 2024 with a score of 8.69 out of 10. A notable slide from its ranking of 5th as recently as 2020. Really? Oh. I mean, we saw backsliding in our happiness index too, right? And in a lot of cases, this is linked. Your democracy starts to backslide, then all of a sudden, happiness starts to backslide. And I mean, right here is how you fix it. Proportional representation. Party receives seats in proportion to the share of votes they earn nationally. Doing this at a national level will just move Canada's democracy value up. Through the relation that we're seeing, which I believe to be causal in nature, that would move up the happiness. That's one way to fix it right there. Okay. System. Canada is also a constitutional monarchy, sharing the same crown as Denmark, now under King Charles III. Really? So Denmark is the technically constitutional monarchy, the same as us, under King Charles III. With a bicameral federal parliament, the elected House of Commons and the appointed Senate. It uses, so bicameral means there's two governing powers. And what was this? Unicameral means they only have one, which is the Folkening? The Folkening.
Folketing.
Folkening. They have the Folkening. So that means if we got rid of the Senate, we would be a unicameral parliament. But we're bicameral federal parliament now. I remember because one of the questions on the Alberta referendum is, should we abolish the Senate? Because I mean, despite being a bicameral federal parliament, the Senate doesn't have a whole lot of power, in my opinion. Like, kind of just rubber stamps things. It is extra layers of like committees and stuff, but I mean, clearly if you do the House of Commons or the Folkening well, you don't need the other one. You don't need the Senate. Why do we got such a lame name? House of Commons. We got the Folkening. Like, can we give our governing body like a cool name? Like, the House of Commons is so generic. We got to come up with a better name for our governing body. It uses the first past the post electoral system, where whichever candidate gets the most votes in a riding wins, regardless of whether they hit 50%. It is also a federation of 10 provinces and 3 territories, giving significant power to regional governments. Yeah, so there's quite a few differences. I'm not a fan of the first past the post system. I far prefer a proportional representation system. Like, that is something I hope we can change in our government, because that would it would bring in far more ideas. Like, it breaks the like the two-party system that you see in the US, because the US does the same kind of thing we do, which is why they end up with a two-party system. And we have 2 parties plus a couple of smaller parties in Canada. And the federation of 10 provinces and 3 territories giving power to regional government is different. Okay, Canada's ranking dropped sharply in 2021 due to significant decline in the political culture and functioning of government categories. Driven largely by World Value Survey data showing erosion of support for democracy among the public. Really? In 2021? Is that COVID? Became less democratic during COVID? Okay. Score, Denmark is 7th, Canada is 14th. I mean, like, we're not that far behind them, all things considered, but electoral system, proportional representation, I like that one more. First past the post, unicameral, opening, bicameral, House of Commons plus Senate. Like, I'm unicameral, like that idea. Memory type, multi-party coalitions, usually two-party dominant. Voter turnout, 85%. In Canada, it's usually 60 to 65. Wasn't the last one a lot bigger? What was the turnout in the last Canadian election? I thought we had higher numbers than that. No. Under 70, which is higher than typical. Okay. Corruption, world's lowest. Low, but higher than Denmark. Press freedom, top 3 globally. Top 15 to 20 globally. Federalism, unitary state. Strong federal system. What is it? Unitary state. A unitary state is a sovereign state governed as a single entity where the central government is supreme and holds ultimate authority. Any regional or local government unit exists only to exercise power delegated by the central government. So they have more authority within their folkening than we in our House of Commons and Senate. That's interesting. I wonder if a unitary state generally does better than a federal system. I mean, Canada is much larger, right? Denmark population. Yeah, 6.03 million. And so there's like provinces in Canada that size. Ontario population. Significantly larger provinces than all of Denmark. So the federal system, the provincial government actually is controlling more people than their whole federal system. Still, it looks like a unitary state tends to do well. Okay, here we go. Where Denmark does better. Electoral fairness, proportional representation. Yep, that's what I like. Denmark's proportional representation system means almost no votes are wasted. If a party gets 10% of the vote, they get roughly 10% of the seat. Canada's first past the post system routinely produces majority governments with only 35 to 40% of the popular, leaving millions of voters with no meaningful representation. Number 2, voter turnout and civic participation. Denmark's 85% turnout dwarfs Canada's typical 60 to 65. We had almost 70 last time. Higher turnout generally reflects greater public trust in the system and the sense that voting actually changes outcomes. 3. Corruption and government accountability. Denmark is consistently at the top at or near the top of Transparency International rankings. Canada performs well but has reoccurring political scandals. The CNC Laval affair, sponsorship scandal that reflect a more transactional political structure. Look up Canadian political scandal next. Just to have a look. I'm gonna put that on the list actually, rather than looking it up right. Canada political scandal. Come back to that one. 4. Press freedom. Denmark typically ranks in the top 3 on Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index. Oh, I love these indexes. World Press. Give me a chart too. Happy. Give me a chart. Give me a map. Scroll to navigate the infographic. I want the map. Give me the map. I don't care about learning about the map. Beautiful. Press freedom. 25 years. Not good. Press freedom. Map. Okay, so Denmark, press freedom 88.47. Economic, they're a little lower. And they're actually 4th. Estonia, Netherlands, Norway. I mean, like, all countries you see at the top of the happiness index also seem to do really well on press freedom. Okay, where's Canada? We are 20th, really? Political, we're 12th. Economic, we got quite a low. We actually got quite a low economic score. 23rd. Legal? Not so good. Why is our press not free? How about the US? 64th. Wait, there's 62. Okay. Significantly better. 78.76. Go down here. Political freedom. What is happening there? 64? Isn't like freedom of speech America's whole thing? And they rank 64th at it? What's going on? I mean, look at all that red. The Middle East, most of Asia. 62. Man, huh? Well, they also ain't doing so good. I mean, like, South Africa's doing better than the US for press freedom. Remember that? Remember this one? Costa Rica was also really high. They also have good press freedom, although political within their country. 71. They don't exactly have a lot of political freedom. They still generally rank pretty high. These little islands, can I click on them? Could almost click on one. Oh. Yep, Spain. 75. A lot of countries just have lower economic press freedom. I wonder why that is. How do I find a country that does good on economic? East Timor. I've never heard of this country. Like, that is Indonesia. East Timor. Where is can I zoom in? I want to zoom in. Oh, that is a worrying trend. Middle East doing a little better, but basically everywhere else is going down on press freedom. I want to zoom. Oh, when I scroll, it uses that. Okay. I want to see Singapore. Singapore's in here, right? Somewhere. I'm never gonna find it. It's a little island, isn't it? Okay. Let's go back. Oh. This is using the same data. But we got a little chart. Norway, Netherlands, Estonia, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Ireland, Switzerland. Yeah. Okay. Did I save this one? I did. We're good. Where were we? Okay. So, Denmark typically ranks in the top 3 on Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index, while Canada, though free, ranks somewhat lower due to issues of media consolidation and the economic fragility of local German journalism. I mean, like that's hard to fix. Coalition governments and consensus culture. Because coalition governments are the norm in Denmark, parties are forced to compromise and negotiate. This tends to produce more durable, broader supported policies. Canada's first past the post can swing power wildly between parties with very different visions. I mean, we see that with a couple seats going over to the Liberals, and now they have a majority, right? That's a wild swing in power for something that nobody voted for. I do not agree with the party crossings in Canada at all. Okay, 6. Political trust and institutional confidence. Denmark has above average levels of political trust. Democracy remains well functioning in terms of the state-citizen relationship. Canada's political trust has been declining, which partly explains its falling EIU. Canada's political trust has been declining. Oh. EIU score. So bottom line. Okay, where Canada does better. Managing a vast, diverse federation. Canada's federal system, while messy, is uniquely suited to govern a country of extraordinarily geographic and cultural scale. 10 million kilometers squared with distinct regional economies, languages, and cultures. Denmark is a small, relatively homogeneous country where a unitary system works naturally. Canada's federalism allows provinces like Quebec to preserve a distinct identity and culture and allow for policy experimentation. 2. Constitutionally entrenched rights. Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, 1982, is one of the most robust constitutionally entrenched rights documents in the world. Courts have actively used it to strike down government overreach on issues from freedom of speech to equality rights. Denmark has strong rights protection too, but they function more through statute and political culture than through a single powerful constitutional charter. I want to go through that in depth at some point. Multiculturalism and immigration historically. Canada has long been a global model for managed immigration and official multiculturalism. Denmark has transitioned from having the most people-friendly immigration policies to designated areas as parallel societies. Depending on their percentage of non-Westerners, and its immigration regime has become one of the harshest in Western Europe. A real democracy blemished by many human rights standards. Immigration regime has become one of the harshest in Western Europe. Really? Like, my personal opinion here is that, like, a country should be allowed full control over their immigrants. A country that does not want to accept people does not have to. They can choose their own immigration system. Now, what it says about parallel societies, I'm interested in figuring out more about that. But we'll talk about that at the end. I don't really consider a harsh immigration system a blemish on human rights. Like, you can set your immigration system how you want. You don't have to accept people. I don't think it affects human rights. Minority and indigenous rights structurally. Well, both countries have serious histories of mistreating indigenous people. Correct. Canada's legal and constitutional framework for indigenous rights includes Section 35 of the Constitution Act. Ongoing treaty processes is more developed. Denmark still faces systematic historical injustice against the Greenland Inuit, and this remains a live political issue. Number 5, geographic democratic influence. Canada punches above its weight on the world stage as a democracy. Through NATO, the G7, the UN, and the Commonwealth, it exports democratic norms more actively than Denmark, which matters for global democratic health. The bottom line, Denmark runs a tighter, more efficient, more participatory democracy at a national level. Proportional system, high trust, low corruption, and strong consensus culture make it a model that political scientists frequently hold up as an ideal. If you're measuring the quality of democracy mechanics, Denmark wins. Canada's democracy is stronger in its structural ability to manage diversity and scale, and its charter-based rights culture is genuinely impressive, but it's been slipping, declining political trust, a voting system that distorts representation, and appointed Senate that lacks democratic legitimacy. Growing polarization are real weaknesses. So, declining political trust. You just got to fix everything else for that to go up. A voting system that distorts representation. This is the first past the post system rather than the proportional representation system that they use in Denmark. Um, like this is something that I think, at least at the federal level, maybe even at the provincial levels, should be changed. Your power inside your governing body should be representative of the total votes you caught across your country, rather than in specific districts needing to win specific districts. Like we see all the negatives of our system in the US. Like ours is not that bad because districts are done by are created by like a non-political system. So there isn't gerrymandering, but gerrymandering is the next step at removing representation from the system that we currently use. Now, if we use the proportional system that is used in Denmark, then gerrymandering is impossible because every vote counts. And I like that system. I think that is an improved system on what we use. And I personally like to push for a system like that to be used in Canada, because it would fix the declining political trust if votes mattered more. An appointed Senate that lacks democratic legitimacy, the Senate's useless. We should have got rid of it a long time ago. But it's just a tumor that stuck to our democracy based off how we originally designed it. You could easily get rid of the Senate, roll what it did well into the House of Commons, because like there are some purposes, but roll that into the House of Commons. Give the House of Commons a better name. Like the Folkening. we gotta call it something cool. And roll the Senate's responsibilities in. The growing polarization, just like declining political trust, I think if you switch to a proportional representation system, you would get more diversity of thought in our House of Commons, and that would actually fix the growing polarization. Okay, for Canada, looking at Denmark, the most obvious election is electoral reform. Moving away from the first past the post would likely increase turnout, broaden representation, and reduce the toxicity of the winner take all political system. It's a reform Canada has debated for decades but never enacted. Basically what I said. The first past the post system is flawed, and a proportional representation system would be better. Okay, important question. Denmark calls their political party the Folkening. What are some good ideas for what Canada could call its political system? Political body. It definitely did not get Folkening. Denmark calls their political party the Folkening. What are some good ideas for Canada to call its political body? More like historic. Let's just see what it comes. Yeah, we definitely got to come up with a better name. 100%. The House of Commons and the Senate. Denmark's parliament, their legislative body, not the political party. Okay, yeah. Roughly translates from Danish as the People's Assembly. Ooh, or Parliament of the Folk. I like those. A great name because it feels grounded and civic. Canada's equivalent is simply called Parliament. Ugh. Divided into the House of Commons. Yep, yep. Drawn from indigenous language, these would be the most distinct Canadian options. Drawing from Canadian history and culture. Okay. The Dominion Assembly. Dominion was Canada's original constitutional designation. It has grand historic ring to it. The Commons. Stripping it back, like, this is like assuming we can remove the Senate as well, you know, just call it the Commons. Stripping it back to just the word keeps the Italian spirit of House of Commons while feeling simpler and more modern. The Confederation, I mean, the Dominion and the Commons both have a good ring. The Commons is simpler, more direct, drawing from the folk spirit. No, I don't really care. These ones are the two I like. The Commons. I think that one has the best ring. I like that. Common. House of Commons. Rolls. The Commons. It's not. Not like the Folkening still. That's kind of like a translation thing too. Kanata stands out. It's historically grounded, the linguistically indigenous, phonetically pleasing, and carries the full weight of the country's story. It's literally where the name Canada came from. A parliament called the Kanata would be internally recognizable as distinctly and unapologetically Canadian. Where's that? Okay. Kanata. The Huron Iquiss word for which Canada itself derives, meaning village or settlement. I mean, we used it as the framework, but it's kind of, it might be too close to Canada. Canada? how is it said?
Canada.
Canada? I don't feel it. Too close to Canada. Nada. No. Here we go.
The Commons.
The Common. That one's better.
The Commons.
I like that one better. What's the other one I was recommending?
The Dominion Assembly.
No, too much to it. The Commons wins. Let's see. Can I get a few more polls? Drawing from Canada's history and culture. Let's see if it comes up with anything else. But right now, the Commons. I imagine there's already people that call it that. Right? The House of Commons, the Commons. Memorial Council. Oh, I like that one.
The Boreal Council.
The Boreal Council. Oh, okay, I gotta close some of these because I'm. No. The Rideau Assembly. Rideau is already woven into the fabric of Ottawa. Rideau Hall. Rideau Canal. Okay, that's already used. The Great Assembly. Charlottetown. The is the birthplace of the Confederation. Nope. The compact, rooted in the idea of Confederation as a compact between provinces. The people. What's this one say?
The compact.
No, the Commons wins. People's Assembly, the Champions Assembly, the Warrior Council, the Commonwealth. No.
The True North Assembly. The True North Assembly.
No. Commons wins. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. The Parliament is now the Common. Perfect. Okay, there was something I wanted to look up before I got onto my distraction. Something about Denmark's immigration system. And its immigration regime has become one of the harshest in Western Europe. Can you go into detail about Denmark's immigration system for me? Okay. There's also a video I wanted to watch. Oh. Kind of getting late. 13 minutes. The reason behind the 2008 crisis. I do want to, because I've heard quite a bit about it, and I want to see if this matches my knowledge of the system. Okay. Denmark's immigration system is one of the most talked about and controversial in the world right now. It's genuinely complex with very different treatment depending on why you're coming. Here's a thorough breakdown. The big picture. Denmark has seen a significant increase in immigration over the past 30 years, with a large part coming from non-Western countries. I think we're starting to see that pretty much all over the West. And typically, most of... Did it just change everything? I'll put in the piece thingy. So typically, most Western nations have had a very open immigration, but typically that was Western countries, like people from other Western countries coming in. Like a significant amount of immigration made up in Canada was from Europe and the US and other Western nations. So because a lot of Western nations had that, where it was typically other Westerners traveling to other Western nations, a lot of Western nations had very open immigration. What we see now is that because of strong safety nets, strong economies, and how cheap it's becoming to travel, we see a lot of non-Western immigrants coming. And just statistically speaking, they do not integrate as well. And so you see a lot of countries like the US and apparently Denmark pulling back on their immigration and making like immigration more difficult to their country. Now, as far as I understand, like Western immigration is still pretty easy. Like I don't think Canadians have a difficult time moving and working in the US, even though there is quite a pullback. Like we've seen it in the US, right? Quite a pullback in their immigration system. Let's have a look at theirs. Okay. Denmark has seen a significant increase in immigration over the past 30 years, with a large part coming from non-Western countries recently. As of January 2024, the foreign-born population represents 14% of total population. Foreign-born represents 14% of total population. 4.6% born in another EU state and 9.4% born outside the EU. What percentage of Canadians are foreign-born? What percentage of Americans are foreign-born? And what percentage of people in the UK are foreign-born? Might as well get a couple. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has achieved what many center-left governments have. Center-left isn't like isn't the left part of like more immigration? Because in my head, those two are connected. So he's center left and he's very firmly against immigration. Okay. So Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has achieved what many center left governments have found impossible: getting re-elected. Great. Winning elections in 2019, 2022, and polling to win again in 2026, largely on the back of her immigration policies. Many European leaders now look to Denmark as a model for better or worse. I mean, like, that just goes to show you, if you disconnect the open border policies with the left, like, center left won multiple times. So what causes the left to lose is immigration. Is this why we see Trump focused on it so much? Like, what if the left in the US just became more harsh on immigration? What would he do? Okay, I asked another question. Canada, whoa! 23 to 24%. Canada has the highest proportion among the G7. The most recent census recorded 23%. And despite recent drops in temporary residents, the permanent resident immigration population remains high. Canada. So, what were the numbers in Denmark when they considered it high? 14. So, US is around there. United Kingdom is actually a little above there. Canada's way above there. Whoa. Insane. Okay. The 2021-2022 census recorded 16%, while migrants has been high in the years since. Official 2026 updates from the current. Okay. Canada, while Canada has the highest percentage, it is currently experiencing a unique shift. As of January 1st, 2026, the total population saw a rare quarterly decline, primarily due to sharp reduction in temporary residents, as the government works towards a target of keeping temporary residents at 5% of the total population. In the United States, the immigration population has seen a dramatic turnaround since 1970, when it was only 4.7. Currently, estimates suggest the foreign-born population is roughly 51.9 to 53 million people. So they have more foreign-born people than we have people entirely in our country. United Kingdom, London remains a massive outlier for the UK. While the national average is around 16, over 40% of London residents are foreign-born. Really? Isn't London like their most prosperous city? by a long shot. The top 5 countries of birth for UK migrants populations are India, Poland, Pakistan, Romania, and Ireland. Those are okay. I want to know this for Canada. The foreign-born citizens in Canada, where do they primarily come from? Country-wise. Go. Okay, let's continue. We got through the big picture. Categories of immigration. Denmark treats different types of immigrants very differently. There are essentially 4 streams. EU, free movement. Yes, because it's part of the EU, right? As an EU member, Denmark must allow citizens of other EU and EEA countries. EEA? I know what the EU is. What the heck is the EEA? A. Define the European Economic Area. EEA state, but not part of the non-EEA state. EU member state. So there's just a couple extra states there that are in this EEA. Okay. Okay. Countries to live and work freely. In 2024, Denmark received 54,000 new long-term or permanent immigrants, of which 65% benefit from the EU mobility. This is the easiest and most straightforward path. 2. Labor immigration. Labor migrants made up 21% of new arrivals in 2024. Denmark actively recruits skilled workers through several schemes. The positive list identifies occupations where Denmark has labor shortages. I mean, in my personal opinion, when you find somewhere in your country that has a labor short, shouldn't you train and fast track citizens from your country to fill the shortage? Like, using immigration to kind of help with that is something, but fast tracking people into that, like, that's the only way to permanently solve it. I don't get it. Getting a job in one of these fields fast tracks your application significantly. There's also a pay limit scheme where high earners above a salary threshold can bypass other requirements, and the fast track scheme, which allows pre-approved Danish companies to sponsor foreign workers. Oh, we got that one. And that one, you don't want to depend too heavily on that one, because companies will abuse it. Family reunification. This is one of the most heavily restricted categories. Requirements include that family members applying for reunification cannot have a history of certain criminal convictions, a rule that also applies to those seeking permanent residency. There are also strict financing guarantees required from the Danish sponsor, though a 2024 reform reduced the financial guarantee requirements by half. For asylum/refugees, this is where Denmark's system is most controversial and arguably the harshest in the Western world. Ooh, we're going to get into that. I think I did not change. Yes, I did not change any of my stream. I'm apparently still talking about the safety. I need to get on to I luckily I don't have to. Okay. Here we YouTube asked for a... Oh well, there we go. Fix. Okay, so their asylum and refugee system is controversial and arguably the harshest in the Western world. Let's go. The asylum system, the paradigm shift. In 2019, Danish integration policy underwent what was officially called a paradigm shift, moving away from integrating migrants and instead placing much greater emphasis on the return of migrants as soon as law allows. The country asylum policy has already been tightened during the 2015 refugee crisis, with new legislation placing restrictions on refugees bringing their families, introducing temporary permanent residence that could be revoked at any time, and placing more demands on asylum seekers related to integration. In 2021, Bernitske, this is the leader of Denmark, right? I gotta at least try his name.
Fredrickson.
Fredrickson. I see it.
Fredrickson.
Perfect. Fredrickson introduced a deportation law allowing refugees to be returned to their country of origin if Denmark deems it safe, and her government ruled Syria safe for refugees to return to, allowing it to withdraw the resident permits of Syria. I mean, Syria was not safe. Like, wasn't Syria like an open turmoil? So basically, we return asylum seekers if we deem the country safe. Everywhere is considered safe. Everywhere. I assume that's the controversial part. The results have been dramatic. In 2024, there were just 4 new asylum claims per 10,000 people in Denmark, compared to 16 per 10,000 in Britain, 20 per 10,000 in the EU as a whole. Britain Home Office noted that Denmark policies have reduced asylum claims to a 40-year low and resulted in the removal of 95% of those whose claims are rejected. I mean, like, a country is allowed to set its, like, as part of the EU, this one they don't have control over. You're part of a bigger governing body. You can influence the bigger governing body, but you can't control that one. This one every country has, because to a degree you want to bring skilled labor in, certainly. Family reunification, you bring labor in if they're productive, good members of society, you let them bring the family in. Okay, this one is completely optional. Like, I understand there's like a humanitarian desire there, but at the same time, you're completely allowed to set that however you want, in my opinion. Asylums and refugees, you don't have to take them if you don't want them. Your government gets to choose how this system's set up, and their government has very clearly decided they don't want them. So, I mean, there's still plenty of places that do accept wide range of asylum and refugee seekers. But like this, the whole, which this seems to be the controversial part, and I mean, you get to choose, right? Like, you don't have to accept asylum seekers and refugees. Like, I would do it on a case-by-case basis personally, but I wonder, where were the numbers? There were just 4 new asylum claims per 10,000 people in Denmark. Oh. How many asylum claims are there in Canada per 10,000 people in Canada? Okay, I don't actually want it to like roll and lose my spot. I don't think I have a choice. Where is the number? Oh, we weren't that low. Here. So there's 4 in Denmark, 20 for the EU as a whole, 16 in Britain. Let's see. Here are the numbers, and they're striking. Canada's asylum claims in 2024, 173,000. In India, Bangladesh, and Nigeria, with Canada's 40.1 million, works out to 43 asylum claims per 10,000 people. Okay, like I personally would like to move that lower. Like the EU average, I don't think we should be above the EU average. I personally like Denmark's asylum system. Why can our left not agree with Denmark's left here? Like I like the rest of the immigration system. I'm not liking this part of it specifically. That is crazy. $43. We're over double the EU average. We're 10 times Denmark's numbers. Important context. Okay, let's read the important context. And is it coming down? Canada's number is unusually inflated for a specific reason. Between January and September 2024 alone, IRCC reviewed 132,000 asylum claims, of which 84,000 came from individuals already inside Canada, not arriving at the border. A significant portion of these are temporary residents, international students, workers, and visitors whose visas are expiring and who are turning to the asylum system as a pathway to stay. Nearly 14,000 asylum claims in 2024 were made by international students alone, 30% increase from the year before, and a massive strike from just 180 such claims in 2018. So Canada's figures isn't precisely a measure of people fleeing prosecution arriving at the border. It's also a reflection of a stressed immigration system where temporary residents are using asylum as a fallback. So the asylum system is being used as a fallback system. I don't like that. I don't like that. Is it coming down? Yes, noticeably. Canada received 37 fewer asylum claims in the first half of 2025 compared to the period in 2024. Heightened scrutiny of temporary residence visa applications led to an 80% drop in asylum claims from visa holders in February compared to. So the peak appears to have been 2023 and 2024. Is that Trudeau? I'm pretty sure that's Trudeau. Yeah, like most of our problems you can pretty much trace back to Trudeau. And the numbers are now falling significantly, but Canada still remains one of the highest per capita asylum claim destinations in the developed world. Okay. I don't like this. I think we should aim for this. Personally. That's my opinion. I liked. Am I even in the right chat anymore? Like these ones I all liked, and then this one, I mean, why are we so much higher than the average? And Denmark's at 4. Why can't our left be like Denmark's left. I might actually like them if they were. Okay, I have completely lost where I was in understanding immigration. The parallel societies. Okay, we were here. We want the parallel societies. I'm probably not getting to this video. Unfortunately, that'll have to wait. So I did want to read about this. One of Denmark's most internationally scrutinized policy targets neighborhoods with high concentration of immigrants. So if you want less friction in your society between your native residents and immigrants or minorities in any sense, you have to do you have to promote and almost enforce a policy where they like live with each other. Like in Singapore, it is done such that you create well, in Singapore you have a lot of most housing is government housing. So when you're looking for a house, you're given a house and it's beside the house of immigrants or close to the house of another minority or another group. And in this way, by forcing them to live in close proximity, by forcing people to live in close proximity, you get rid of a lot of that the friction that builds up. And like I think we see coming out in the US quite prominently right now. In 2018, a law targeting parallel societies came into force, allowing the government to demolish or sell off social housing areas where more than half the residents are from a non-Western background. If those areas also meet criteria related to crime and poverty, refugees in these areas are also not eligible for family reunification. I mean, I understand that one. Like, if someone comes in as a labor migrant, but they're not a productive member of society, they're in poverty, why allow them to bring their family? Shouldn't, if they come to your country and then they end up in poverty, shouldn't they be going back to their family, country of origin? So I understand that part of it for sure. But this whole, like, the parallel societies things is something you really have to be careful. Where would I be able to find it? Maybe X. Maybe just Google's a better bet. Statue of an Indian god in Ontario. Let's see if I can find this. This one. Yeah. Like, parallel societies are dangerous. I'm just gonna use this as proof. They are. You really want to promote integration if you're bringing people into your nation. And parallel societies is what'll cause friction, and the friction is what'll cause pushback. And so something like what Singapore does, where they have so much social housing that they use social housing kind of like force integration. You can say what you want about it, but it works. Okay. Refugees in these areas are also not eligible for primary reunification. That's with the backing of both sides of the political spectrum. Danish policy has also implemented cultural training for children of immigrants from age 1 and controls on whether people can wear traditional religious clothes in certain contexts. With the backing of both sides of the political spectrum, so the right and the left, Danish policy has also implemented cultural training for children of immigrants from age 1 and controls on whether people can wear traditional religious clothes in certain contexts. Honestly, I feel this is the way a lot of the West is moving. Critics include many human rights organizations argue these policies disproportionately target racial and ethnical minorities and are motivated by discrimination rather than integration. I mean, you wanna motivate it by integration, obviously. I can't speak on how specifically they do it, but you always see things like this happening, and usually it's like a cycle. And I think we're coming back around to when I think many countries are trying to create a national identity and lean more into nationalism, and it's hard to do that if like the whole idea of nationalism is culture, a national identity. So everyone has to kind of understand the culture in a specific way. I don't know here, but we definitely see a push for in a lot of Western countries. Policies disproportionately. Well, you do want to focus on integration, preferably less of this. Brampton, can I get address? Let's look this up on Google Maps. Just to see it. Okay, I think this is it. Can we see it from space? No. Not that side. So I'm assuming it's this building. Let me go around the building then if it's not. Okay. I don't know. This is the address it gave me. You got a picture of it. Well, it doesn't look like we can see it from the road. No. Can we see it from space? That's a tall something. Tim Hortons. Bus garage. Clearly where it is. Image of it. Anyway. It's over there. X over here. Nothing. Okay, we're gonna move on. Back to the integration program. For those who are allowed to stay, Denmark runs a structured integration program as of January 2025. Like, I think they may be pushing this a little far. This is starting to sound like some problems from the past here, but let's obviously how they're doing this. For those who are allowed to stay, Denmark runs a structural integration program. As of January 2025, there are 3 types of programs: the introduction program for refugees and reunified families, the self-support and return program for displaced Ukrainians, so the Ukrainians have their own special program, and an introduction course for other immigrants and accompanying family members. I mean, like, I think doesn't pretty much every country run programs like this? I remember when you come to Canada, you have to go through a special program where, like, they learn probably more about Canadian, or they're forced to sit through more of Canadian history than I was as a kid in Canadian school. The program focuses heavily on language. I mean, language is so important. Like in Canada, you really need English or French, and most people speak one of those. But language is so important, and Danish is one, like, English is far more prevalent in the world than Danish, and so we get a lot more immigration here because of that, because it's an English country. The U.S. sees this too. Danish language learning is mandatory and tested rigorously. Oh, so they like enforce it. In May 2024, Danish Parliament reaffirmed mandatory Danish language tests in primary and lower secondary schools where over 30% of students live in social vulnerable areas, with pupils requiring to pass language tests to advance to the next. I mean, like, for cohesion of a country, language is important. In Canada, I don't think we force English or French, but it's definitely like a benefit if you're trying to apply. Employment: there is a work obligation which requires that anyone receiving benefit supports undertakes a mandatory program run by local administrations, which can include internships and language training. The work obligation and minimum rate are both targeted at people with refugee or other migration backgrounds, especially women from third countries outside the labor market. Okay, like that. Isn't the US doing something like this too now? Where if you're receiving benefits, like, you have to show that you're like looking for a job. I'm pretty sure that's the way the Canadian system works. Where you have to receive benefits, you have to state that you're looking. But it looks like they have in Canada, from my understanding, you just have to say you're looking for a job. It sounds like they run actual programs which can include like putting you into work and language training. Benefits: refugees who have not lived in Denmark for 9 years within the past 10 years receive the minimum allowance, considerably less than what Danish citizens receive. I mean, if they haven't been living in your country, that's the thing, right? As soon as you have a strong welfare state, people are just going to try and come over to use the welfare state. And so if you're going to use the welfare state, you got to live in the country. That makes sense. The Integration Barometer. Denmark Integrations Barometer has been tracking progress towards 9 integration goals since 2012. Converting work, education, language, active citizenship, equality, self-determination, and crime. The August 2025 report shows progress in all but 2 of the goals. So you're telling me it's working. So by Denmark's own metric, the system is working, though critics argue those metrics are narrowly defined. the system is working. Fredrickson has justified her immigration policies by pitting the challenges of immigration against the affordability of public services and the welfare state, arguing that Denmark cannot maintain its generous social programs if immigration is unrestricted. This is the core logic of the Danish model. It frames strict immigration as protecting the welfare state, not opposing it. I completely agree with that. With that sentiment. However, a study into rules tightening access to settlement in Denmark found that the policies, which were intended to support labor market outcomes, in fact led to lower employment levels. Okay, because people who were already struggling with integration became discouraged, feeling the requirements were too difficult to meet. And politically, while the Danish model has won the Social Democrats' praise abroad, some are growing disillusioned at home. The Fredrickson party losing control of Copenhagen for the first time in more than a century in local elections, with analysts saying the hardline immigration stance has alienated its more progressive urban base. Oh, so they're facing some pushback. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I see CNN and I don't trust a single word they say. Just historically, that one I don't trust. Actually, I'm gonna put them on here. Where's my news? News style. Do not avoid CNN. I'm just gonna do not like I watched a video of how they manipulated footage to make Trump look like they say things he doesn't say over the election, and honestly, they're in the dumpster bin and I will never trust them again. Bottom line, Denmark's immigration system is essentially a two-track model, relatively open to skilled workers and EU citizens that the economy needs, and extraordinarily restrictive towards asylum seekers and low-income family reunification. It is arguably the toughest asylum system in the Western world, framed domestically as a defense of the welfare state and criticized internationally as discriminatory. It is actively being copied by governments across Europe, including the UK, making Denmark's choices one of the most consequential immigration policy experiments in the democratic world right now. Fredrickson, what is this party? What is the political party Fredrickson controls in Denmark? Like, they've been in for like 3-4 year terms, haven't they? Social Democrats. Social Democrats. Denmark. Popularity. Oh. I want graph. Give it to me over time. That looks like it, but I also think this will probably. Following the general election, Danish Social Democrats under Prime Minister Fredrickson secured the most seats, 35, but experienced a significant drop in support compared to previous election. Making their weakest parliamentary election result in over a century. Increased voter satisfaction with the coalition government, despite losing Party suffered from incumbency fatigue and the difficulties of leading an unprecedented center-left, center-right coalition. The party faced significant losses in local election, losing its majority interest. Okay. So they have lost, but I mean they still won the election. What are the reasons why Fredriksson's Social Democrat Party is losing popularity? Denmark, to make sure it knows exactly who I'm talking about because I'm not looking up the spelling of that. I'm not going to check. Yeah. Well, they say that it's because of a temporary residence influx. Trying to use the asylum system to get citizenship. I mean, in my opinion, that number is still way too high. I mean, maybe don't push it down to Denmark level. I mean, I would like at least EU or Great Britain or United Kingdom. Okay, this is a great question with very fresh answers. Denmark just held a general election. Really? On March 24th, less than 2 months ago, and the results were devastating for Fredriksson's party. Here's the full picture and why they've been losing ground. Here we go. The scale of the decline. Fredriksson's Social Democrat Party has its worst election results since 1903. Whoa. Winning just 38 seats, and how are they leading? I mean, I guess this is all the proportional representation system. You got to create a coalition to lead. I mean, down from 50 seats 4 years ago. The biggest single party, but with 21.9% of the vote, well below the 27.5 they took in the election. Okay, the reasons. Cost of living and housing. We see this issue in a lot of Western countries. No government seems to be able to figure this out yet. When one does, I'm going to try and look at it. What was it? Sweden were we looking at? Finland, the Finnish housing system, actually. And they had multiple tiers of housing, different people depending on your income, from social housing to free market. And they had a middle tier too that was like semi-social housing, if you had like a middle income. And it was really well done. I liked that. And I made a whole video about why we should copy it. But apparently Denmark is not. I have a problem with cost of living and housing. Erosion of public services has been an economic issue, like cost of living, including both housing costs and food price inflation, as well as traditional welfare issues like public health and education spending. For a party whose entire identity is built around protecting the welfare state, being seen as presiding over its decline is deeply damaging. The centralist Grand Coalition abandoning the left. This is a crucial structural factor. Since the 2022 election, Denmark has been governed by an unusual over-the-center Grand Coalition. I mean, like, that's kind of what you want. Over-the-center Grand Coalition. Between the Social Democrats, the Liberal, then Tester, and the Central Moderates. Breaking with decades of political custom, as Fredriksson chose to govern alongside her traditional rivals despite having a nominal left-wing majority available. The result was predictable unease and often unpopular government, caught between ideological compromise and a restless electorate. The governing coalition oversaw a noticeable rightward shift on economics. I mean, we're seeing this notable rightward shift in a lot of places. See it very prominently in the U.S. Trump turned every single state more Republican. He moved them all rightwards. And I don't think he was even particularly good. Noticeable rightward shift on economic, social, and migration issues, including the abolish of popular national holiday to fund weapons for Ukraine. Oh, and this came at a political cost. Traditional left-wing voters felt betrayed. Being squeezed from both sides on immigration, this is the central irony of Frederickson's strategy. The Social Democrats lost voters to both right and left. So basically, they're middle. They lost voters to both extremes. Right-leaning voters went for the party that championed harsh immigration policies for decades rather than the ones that adopted them more recently, while their courting of far-right voters alienated their left-wing base. In other words, right-wing voters didn't trust their authenticity on immigration. They seem to be doing pretty well in my books. And left-wing voters were disgusted by it. So literally, polarization we see happening in US, Canada, it's happening everywhere. The center party lost people to the far left and the far right. Far right, far left. I don't know, the camera. It could be backwards. Rural voters angry over climate policy. Rural voters often angry over increased environmental regulation, a proliferation of wind and solar parks, shift to right-wing populist parties such as Danish People Party. Many voters in rural areas simply don't buy into the climate agendas. I think that's also true everywhere. At least in Alberta, the climate agenda is not looked at favorably, said political commentator Henrik. Nope. Too much focus on foreign affairs. Frederickson called a snap election early, hoping her high-profile defiance of Donald Trump's threats to acquire Greenland would give her a boost. It didn't work. A social democrat lawmaker acknowledged that there's been a lot of trouble in Europe, and I think our government has had a lot of focus on Ukraine, and I think we have lost a little bit in domestic votes. Voters wanted their domestic concerns addressed first. This is true everywhere. Like, every time I see like a new aid deal for Ukraine, I'm like, why isn't this housing for home in our country? We do have a problem with people living on the streets. Why are we not addressing that before giving military support to another nation? Like, I support Ukraine in the defense of their nation. I support the people living, my neighbors living on the street more. And I would like to see them cared for before weapons are given to a foreign country. I mean, that's my personal opinion on it. Bottom line, political commentator Henrik summed it up bluntly. The days of the Social Democrats as the big unifying party covering both urban and rural areas are coming to an end. Frederickson tried to build a coalition of voters that spanned the entire Danish political spectrum, tough on immigration to keep rural and working class voters, centralist in government to appear stable, and still nominally left-wing on the welfare state. The problem is that each of these moves alienated a different part of her base, and the party ended up being squeezed from all directions out. is a cautionary tale about the limits of political triangulation. Despite all this, Frederickson remains the leader of the largest single party, and the King of Denmark instructed her to form a new government following the election, so she may yet return as Prime Minister, just in a much weaker position than before. Interesting. I mean, I kind of like their position. But it seems they're losing voters to both extremes, which is something I think we're gonna continue to see across a lot of the West. But she did win the election. The leader of the largest single party remains the leader of the largest single party, instructed to form a new government.